Hello, and welcome back to Mini Adventures Mini. So I'm going to try and keep this short since the actual painting section for this video is fairly long this week. I'm just going into my part 2 of this little Star Wars set that I did. Last week I did the Rancor, so if you'd like to see that, there will be a link in the end of the video. You can go back and watch that video from last week. But this week we're painting Ahsoka, the Force user. I don't believe she's a Jedi. I'm not super caught up with the lore on her, but it was a pretty cool model that I was doing as a Christmas present, so that's the main reason I was doing it. But so we're painting Ahsoka. She's kind of like jumping off of a tree branch base. It looks kind of cool. It's supposed to be set up with the Rancor I painted last week to have this cool fight scene, pseudo diorama effect going on. And it looks pretty neat, and the person I gave it to was ecstatic with it. So it was a fun time, and I had a good time painting this, and it was a good learning opportunity as well, trying to put in the detail that I wanted to try and make it a little bit more of a display quality than just a tabletop quality. And since I'm not really used to that, that's a difficult thing for me, since I always paint for tabletop purposes. I don't normally paint for display, but overall I think it came out good. But like I said, it's long, so let's go ahead and jump in and I'll show you how I painted Ahsoka. Alright, so here we are before we get any paint going on this miniature here. This is one that I printed on my Anycubic Photon S, just with some Yulagoo grape resin, and I've put the couple of parts together. I painted the character and the base separately, then I attached them and primed them with my Vallejo gray primer with an airbrush to get to this starting point. And then for my initial prep, I'm prepping this with a Zenithal undercoat, and I'm using inks through my airbrush, just these Liquitex inks, starting with this black and just giving everything a thorough coating. And next I go on to this medium gray color, which I spray from a nice 45-degree angle to help me get that transition going. And then the last step is just taking the white that you spray on from a solid 90-degree angle to the base, and this gets you a nice good transition from bright highlights down to dark shadows. And then I use this burnt umber ink through the airbrush again to tint the log and dirt areas. This is the primary reason I did the Zenithal, was just to get like 90% of this log painted right away. Next, I'm coming in here with this lava orange as the base color that I'm using for her skin tone. And I know this isn't necessarily completely accurate, but with miniatures I've found that you tend to need to over-exaggerate colors in order for them to show up properly. So I'm probably doing a more bright look at orange than what you would typically actually see on this character. But in the end, I think it comes out looking pretty good for this kind of thing. And I'm also using mummy robes to get her hair tentacle things going on here, because I want those to be more uniform and bright for the texturing steps we'll be doing later. And this is going to be looking kind of goofy for the next couple of steps here, but do bear with me, it does start coming together later on, and doesn't look that bad at all. But just trying to get all these basic colors in here. Got to layer up the skin a little bit because it's a little bit too see-through at the moment. Just working on trying to get all the parts that I can right now, and trying to keep everything in frame as best as I can with this large unwieldy base, and make it so that you can see as well as I can what I'm working on here. Just camera work is something I could go on by itself for a while with miniature painting. It's more difficult than it looks. Her outfit, not all that complicated with colors. A lot of it is this gray, so that's kind of where I'm starting, is just with this uniform gray, which I'll get a little bit of tonal variety from the undercoat just by having the undercoat there, even if it's not super obvious. It's like just a little subtle thing going on, but I'm not trying to do more than necessary with it. I'm just trying to get all of these basic little fabric areas hit with this. It's not really anything special, just getting that base coat in and working on it. These are the foundational steps. Same with this crested sword. It's going on more of these armor plate pieces, but as I was saying, these are just like the foundational steps to getting something that looks good later on. You want to spend as much time as possible working on these foundational elements that you will build upon later with finer details to get your final look, because it doesn't matter how many details you put on. If your base coat is crappy, it will distract from the details and they won't help you at all. So it's entirely possible to do details badly, but it's impossible to have good details show through if the foundation that they're put on is bad. So you want a good foundational paint job going on before you go crazy with any details. And that's just what I'm doing here, is I'm making sure that the solid foundations of all the paint is what I want before I go too crazy with any sort of other paint. Here I'm coming in with this skeleton bone color. I use this a lot throughout the miniature, but here I'm using it to try and get these almost like, they were almost like ceramic looking plates on some of the videos and pictures I had found. Not sure why. It's another part of the armor plates, and the same similar color is used on her boots, so I use it here to try and show that off. And this is just another example of, you really need to be careful with the foundation, and especially showing here like these chunks of bone that I've got to do. I've said it before, bone is one of those paint colors that just does not go smoothly in one coat. I've never found a bone color that goes on smoothly in one coat. You always have to come back and give it at least 2 coats. That's at the bare minimum. I usually have to do 3 or 4 just to get the right coverage and not have any streaks or transparency showing through. So this is another one of those foundational, time-consuming things. You need to make sure that this looks right, because if you just skip on to a wash or another step for detailing, you won't be happy with how it looks. I pulled out the matte white there, but I don't actually use it right away because I realize I need to work on some other stuff. So other than mixing it in with a little bit of the orange to try and get a little bit of skin variation there, just to try and help bring in a little bit more of the vision of where I want to go. That's all I really use it for. And then coming in with the matte black, I get the eyes painted in, because I don't like working on skin and face too much without having the eyes in, because if I mess up the eyes, then it's much harder to fix a skin tone around a face that I've already spent a lot of time working on. And so my solution was just to work on it like this. Sorry about the dog noises in the background. I've been trying to get this video recorded all day, and the dogs around here just won't stop barking. So I'm going to do my best to keep it to a minimum, but if you hear a couple in the background, sorry about that. But let's keep working on this. So I'm playing around with a couple different just tonal variations of this orange color to try and get something that feels kind of like a natural skin tone, but still this orange color, and it's kind of difficult. It's not going exactly the way that I had hoped, but I just keep coming back and touching up on it here and there, trying to get stuff. So see here I'm starting to do a couple of details, just some very basic ones, like here on her kind of like headband thing. And with these, I don't have to be like super accurate, because like in the center of her forehead it's supposed to be kind of a diamond shape. I'm just kind of suggesting that diamond shape. I don't think I got it 100% accurate, but And honestly, I probably should have been more meticulous with that kind of thing, but overall, it came out good. And here, I'm starting to do some of these hair strand details. I have that blue that I showed before. I mixed it with a little bit of gray, and it's a little bit on the thin side here. I end up increasing the amount of blue in the paint that I'm using, and a little bit more saturation in there, just so that it shows through better. And I'm just going across and doing these bands. I'm using some pictures I found online as reference, but I'm also just kind of freestyling it a little bit, just trying to get something that looks about right. And so I'm just going across and getting kind of these little wavy lines. I'm trying to be as accurate as I can be, but I'm also trying not to be too worried about it, because I can come back and make some small corrections if necessary. And this is where I wish I had kind of started off with a higher blue saturation, because now I kind of have to go over everything again and trying to stay within my own lines and trying not to make it any more bulky and difficult than it already is. So that's a little bit difficult, but I think I do all right for the most part, and it seems to look quite a bit like the character. And with these kind of details, you can really start to see the character shine through. It's not something that's like overly much or anything, but it's these details with the hair strands that really start pulling everything together and make everything look the way it's supposed to. And here you can see I often will forget little steps, like this little bone thing popping up that I totally neglected to paint before, and so I end up going back over and getting it. Here I'm doing some washing, and you can see on the top of the log here, this is an example of what happens if you don't set your ink Zetithil undercoat with a layer of varnish before you keep going. So the whole 3 layers of ink that I put up there basically all came up. I guess it's 4 layers of ink there. Just all came up on the brush from the wet wash going over it. And you can pretty much see the primer directly under it in that spot. And I do my best to kind of mask that going forward, but it is a completely obnoxious imperfection, and just rammed home to me the idea: always do a varnish step after spraying with inks. If you're going to do anything potentially destructive to the paint, like working with very wet paints like washes, or something like dry brushing, which can be very abrasive on paint. And here you can see I'm doing some more detailing on her face. She has these kind of like face tattoo markings, and based off of the color, I am using skeleton bone just to try and get in there and get those details. They really kind of help bring her face to looking more actually like Ahsoka, and getting the effect that I want out of it. Here you can see I'm picking out the bone stuff again because I used a different wash on the logs than I want to use on the bone. And then I'm also getting the black around the base for that more kind of pedestal effect that I'm going for. And here I'm finally using some wash on Ahsoka. I'm covering some of the bone bits to try and get the effect that I want. And also adding some more dry brushing to this log and dirt to try and make it look more like a log and dirt. I don't spend too much time on this. It's all fairly basic stuff. I'm focused primarily on Ahsoka, but I'm trying to make the dirt match the dirt that I put under the Rancor base, since they're supposed to be fighting each other on the same world. Figured that was a good plan, so that's what I'm going for on this. And I'm more aggressive with it on the upper areas than the lower areas. And there is just a little bit of foliage. It's difficult to see on here, but I pull out the green skin just to paint these green vine creepers growing on this clod of earth out and up into this tree. It's nothing fancy, but it adds an extra little pop of color to this otherwise fairly drab base. Helps it stand out a bit. And a quick wash on it helps out a little bit. And I also pick out a couple of spots that look more like normal stones than earth, just to pick out to be a gray color so that, again, you have a little bit of color variance going on. And next I use some shining silver to go get some metallics. I wanted these nice and bright, so I hit up her lightsabers with these, and then actually get around to painting the blades, the Ahsoka white color. I had hoped to try and get these blades looking a little bit straighter, but they were so thin that they barely managed to print at this scale on my printer, so I'm just kind of going for what I can get. So she has some slightly curved lightsabers, even though that's not entirely what I was hoping to go for. But I keep going along with my metallics, and I'm using the silver to kind of edge these plates around her hips and on her forearms and whatnot, because I find that detailing like this, it's not necessarily present on the miniature itself, can just make things pop quite a bit, just going around it like that and getting that edge effect. Also, coming in here, I use a little bit of gold on her boots, because that matched the pictures that I was looking at a little bit more than what I was doing before. So I have kind of the bone base with a slight wash, and then kind of a gold on top of that. And then I grab a little bit of red here just to grab some of these like light indicator things that show up on her forearms. Also some of the green there. It's nothing that I saw in any images, it just seemed right based off of what I was seeing on the sculpt. Grab a little bit of orange to get out her fingers here. And we're really just coming into the last little details here, trying to get the last of it all ready. So again, doing some edging, I'm using some more skeleton bone here on the chest plate. Working my way around, sorry for that sudden jump around, but at this point we're finally done, and we're coating everything in my Vallejo matte varnish, just to give everything a nice uniform look. And here's the final images. I apologize for the weird lighting. I had to get this under different lighting conditions than the pre-image, so the lighting is a little off, but it still gives you a good idea of how it came out in the end, and I think I didn't do too bad of a job. It seems to look pretty decent to me, but you let me know what you think. Alright, well, I hope you enjoyed that. I had a lot of fun trying to paint this one. It definitely took a while. I was trying to be careful and get what I could in there and have some fun with it, but overall, I think it came out looking pretty good, and it definitely looks like the character from everything that I can tell. So if you have any feedback, please leave a comment down in the description. I love reading those and seeing what people have to say. If you like the video, please give it a like. That really helps out my videos a lot. And if you want to catch more of my videos in the future, please subscribe and hit that bell icon so that you get notified whenever any of my videos go up. If you want to get in touch with more of my notifications and stuff I might be doing behind the scenes, I have a Facebook channel which has a link down below. And I also have some options for supporting me if you're looking at it. I've got Patreon, which you'll find a link below. I also have an Etsy store where I occasionally put up stuff that I've painted. It's not too active most of the time, but you'll occasionally find stuff that I've painted up for sale, and they show up there. So if you're interested, go take a look at that. With that, I hope to see everybody here again next week.